How long's this one?
Video game genre.
It's this guy. Yeah, you know, we'll watch one more, and then I think we'll be done for the day. I'm not gonna stick around for until the 6 hour mark today. I wanna head out early and go to the gym because I've been kind of lazy on that. Yeah, let's watch. Game genres are kinda trash. I agree with this take. I don't even know what the take is. I just agree with it. There are a lot of people that will, like roguelite, for example. Roguelite, roguelike. Yesterday was a long stream indeed. Well, I've been doing a lot of the 6 hour streams. But yeah, you see, or like, you know, Souls-like. Souls-like is my favorite, yeah. It's like these genres which, when we're talking about a roguelike or a Souls-like, when it is actually like the original game, very obvious. But we've gotten to the point where a game can have like one random little thing and it's like, that's a roguelike or a roguelite. Oh, it has randomly generated maps, that's a roguelite. Oh, it has a dodge roll, that's a Souls-like. It does, but it often gets used in increasingly more and more generic ways. Like, early on I agree with you, but I've seen a lot of people using it in very just awful ways. Genres limit you to specific games and make you miss out on good titles. That's also true. Don't limit yourself to be a fan of, like, a one genre. Like, a good example, right? I love sports anime, and I didn't think I would love sports anime because it's sports anime. And then I watched Kuroko no Basuke. Incredible. I watched Haikyuu. Incredible. I watched the early seasons of Yowamushi Pedal, or Baby Steps, or Diamond No Ace. Amazing. Anyway, game genres are kinda trash.
Are really weird and dumb and stupid, and I hate them. And I made this video to rant about it. Genres as a concept have existed in every medium that has ever existed since basically the dawn of time. After all, us small-brained mammals love to put stuff into boxes.
Yep.
Types of food, types of rocks, types of people. Really, we love nothing more than fitting a bunch of things into a bunch of different categories. Well, almost as much as we love arguing over which is our favorite and then killing each other over it. But despite acting as a pretty handy excuse for causing every terrible event in human history, categories can also be a good thing. They act as a shorthand for descriptions. They let us communicate complex ideas in simpler ways without just starting from scratch every time. So instead of telling a friend this game has a leveling system and randomized loot, plus it lets you shoot people from a first-person perspective, you could just say it's an FPS with RPG elements, and they'll know what you mean.
Or a looter shooter is what we would call those. Chihaya Furu is what got me into sports anime. How? Whatever.
Once a set of rules gets established and given a name, it's much easier to just refer to that instead and throw everything into that box. But what happens when that box fills up with too much stuff, or the rules we use for it become too broad? I mean, can you even tell me what makes something an RPG? If it's just a game where you...
Yeah, that's a big one. RPG. If we're talking classical 2D... turn-based RPGs, yeah, but basically everything with a fucking leveling system, you could argue is an RPG.
Play a role? It would apply to literally every game ever made. Okay, so what if we close the definition to something specific, like any game with stats you can level up, weapons and armor you can loot, choices you can make in the story, and different playable characters and side quests, and maybe an open world. That seems a bit
I
better.
wouldn't put open world in there. There are plenty of very linear RPGs. Final Fantasy 13 being a great example. I don't think anyone would argue that Final Fantasy 13 is not an RPG. Yeah, a lot of modern RPGs are open world, but I wouldn't include that.
But it also means the most successful RPG ever made is Grand Theft Auto 5. You see, base genres on their own are basically useless, unless they're literally just technical descriptions, like...
People like Assassin's Creed is an RPG. Modern Assassin's Creed kind of is. Like, Early Assassin's Creed, absolutely not. Not even close. But once we started getting to like things like Mirage and things like that, I think the Viking one as well, I think you would arguably call it an RPG as well. FF13, famously being called Final Hallway 13. I like the hallway part of 13. I actually don't hate it.
Person shooter. So the answer to what happens when the box gets full is we just make another smaller box, and we call those subgenres. The game is no longer just an RPG, now it's an isometric narrative-driven CRPG, or a turn-based JRPG with life sim elements. And that helps a lot with building an idea of the game up in someone's mind, though it often still isn't enough. I mean, what makes something a JRPG? The name would imply it's any RPG made in Japan, and yet I've never heard anyone use it to describe Dark Souls. Don't lie.
Yeah, JRPG, well... JRPG is a certain kind of RPG, and... typically they're really long. They often have an anime art style. They often revolve around complex party mechanics. Dark Souls, true. But then, like, there are JRPGs that are, like, they don't have party systems. Like, I would argue the East games are still JRPGs in a lot of ways. Like, again, this is sort of the main point of his video. They're not exactly, a JRPG is, you know it when you see it, but it's kind of hard to classify it.
Lie to me. We all know when I say those 4 letters, you're thinking about Chrono Trigger or Persona or something. And I mean, it's not like the
Is that Persona 1?
4 letters, you're thinking about Chrono Trigger or Persona or
What a random choice to use Persona 1.
something. And I mean, it's not like the style of game we consider a JRPG is limited to being made in Japan. They're not region locked or something. You know, like to make one, you'd need to connect to a server in another country with like some...
Now, which VPN company is this going to be an ad for? Who do you think? What do you reckon? Proton VPN, Express VPN? Because this is obviously going to become a VPN ad. Nord? You reckon Nord? Nord's a good guess. Let's see.
Sort of service, like a virtual private network. This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN.
Surfshark. Okay, there we go. Wasn't expecting that one.
Is an app and browser extension that keeps you safe online by masking your IP address and letting you
did you hear they registered a domain for the P4 or for a P4 remake? No, I did not hear that. What is that domain? I would love to know.
virtually travel the world. With just a click of a button or tap of a finger, you can connect to over 3,000 servers in 100.
Atlas is going to do everything except make Persona 6.
countries, meaning you get access to location-restricted content while staying safe online thanks to military-grade encryption. As
Shut the fuck up. This is why I don't want to take any fucking VPN ads, because they want me to say stupid shit like that. Military-grade encryption. Like, I don't... No qualms with this guy. But, like, they're like, oh, it's got AES 256. That's military-grade encryption. Like, yep. Uh-huh. It's also industry standard.
Lives in Canada, I know very well that places like Netflix love to lock certain shows to American servers. But with Surfshark VPN, all I have to do is turn it on and connect to those servers. And now...
One thing that I've been seeing recently with VPN ads is quantum grade encryption. It's encryption for the quantum era.
I can watch whatever I want. I also love the peace of mind that I get browsing the internet, knowing that even if I'm on public Wi-Fi or I'm traveling abroad, nobody can see what I'm browsing, what I've downloaded, or any of my embarrassing Google searches. And get this, one subscription lets you connect as many devices as you want, meaning you can go ahead and share Surfshark with all your friends to let them enjoy all these great features
I have hundreds of friends
So
as
why
well.
don't you go ahead and protect yourself today? Get Surfshark VPN at surfshark.deals/Lextorious and enter promo code Lextorious for an exclusive offer and 3 months extra for free. Thank you to Surfshark
I
VPN
like
for
free
sponsoring this
things.
video. Back to whatever I was talking about. Okay, so describing a game with just genres and subgenres is still very hard and doesn't often paint that clear a picture of exactly what the game is. So why don't we do something much easier and just say it's like Dark Souls? Oh, it's like Dark Souls? Well, I played Dark Souls and I understand the stamina mechanics and bonfire system, so now I have a very clear idea of what this game is like. And you're telling me there's a bunch of games that are all very similar to Dark Souls and share those mechanics? Well, why don't we put them all in a box and call that box Souls-like? How convenient. I'm sure that
Well, that is actually how the term FPS came about. What was it Doom clone? Yeah, Doom clone. Doom clone is the term that was used for early FPS games. Now, Doom wasn't the first FPS game, but it was the first popular one.
won't cause any problems. Now, with this type of game, which I've dubbed the like genre, there's a sort of life cycle that they all go through, where initially a game comes.
The term I really like is a boomer shooter. Boomer shooter is a great term because, like JRPG, you know exactly what people say when they say boomer shooter.
Out that is so influential or unique that it sets a standard. Think of something like Doom, which was pretty much in a league of its own when it comes to shooters. It wasn't the first-person shooter. It wasn't even the first popular
Literally
one,
pre-watch.
but it was so popular that years afterward, any game with gameplay even somewhat similar was dubbed a Doom clone.
Actually pre-watched. Fuck, you got me. I didn't think he would actually mention it.
So FPS finally became a common term. Though this is mostly because a lot of games did come out that just tried to be one-for-one copies of Doom. Clone is a bit of a harsh description for any game not trying to be one, though.
DS1,
which is why terms like Zelda clone or GTA clone never really stuck around to become full-fledged genres. Souls-like, however, stuck hard. Because on top of your typical Lords of the Fallen value brand ripoffs, you also had games that took certain elements or worked off the formula to make something new.
I don't know what that one
They
is.
were like Dark Souls, but not trying to be Dark Souls. So the defining traits of the genre had to open up from one-to-one clone to anything with the...
In my mind, a boomer shooter is any FPS that is spectacle over realism. That would include games like Borderlands, but Borderlands is a very different kind of game.
Classic dodge roll, stamina, bonfire, lose souls when you die type stuff. But then, as the genre grows, it starts incorporating more and more games that do things differently. And some of them don't use dodge rolls at all, or completely change up the checkpoint system. This category that was created entirely as a shorthand to refer to one specific style of game now has many games in it that don't look anything like the Souls.
Yeah, when you start getting into the indie games that people call Souls-light, well, there you go. Now you have the other problem. Then you go from Souls-like into Souls-light. And now, does he mention that one? I wonder. I don't know if he's going to mention the light terms, because that's where you start getting into, like, this doesn't even mean anything. The game has a dodge roll, the game has a potion system, fucking Souls-light.
Series. To refer to them as Souls-likes kind of defeats the point of being that specific to...
Back when Yakuza wasn't that well known yet, it was sometimes called a GTA clone. Saints Row 1 was called a GTA clone as well. Same with Saints Row 2. When it gets into Saints Row the 3rd, it was its own thing. But the early Saints Row games basically are GTA games. Now, they're really good, but they're basically GTA games.
Begin with. But if they're not Souls-likes, we don't have any term we can use to describe them. This box is overflowing with stuff again, and nobody has found another one to put the...
This is a very true description. Fucking Black Myth Wukong, Souls-like. This is the Dark Souls of puzzle games, Souls-like.
Access in. Well, until you get to roguelites. No, not roguelikes, the genre defined by games that are like Rogue. Roguelites, the genre defined by games that are kinda like Rogue, but not enough like Rogue to be called a roguelike. But they're still enough like Rogue
Kinda like Rogue, also known as not at all even remotely like it at all. Should we try Saints Row 3 together? I last played Saints Row 3 like fucking 15 years ago. I'd be up for playing it again.
Categorize them by how like Rogue they are. You just can't call them roguelikes because those games are more like Rogue than these games that are like Rogue or like Rogue, which is why some people also call them roguelike likes.
No one does that.
Do you see how stupid that sounds? It's an attempt to solve the problem of specificity, but in the worst way possible. In a way that is way more confusing, to the point where most people just ignore this distinction and call everything a roguelike anyways.
Yep.
And for
It's
what?
stupid.
The most concrete definition we have of the difference between light and like is something called
I don't know if I have the game on Steam. I actually have no idea, because I played it on console originally. Let's find out. I do not. How much is it? Well, there's a game I'm not going to be playing. It is $15 dues.
Berlin interpretation, which says if a game isn't grid-based, turn-based, and non-modal, among a dozen other factors, it's not a true roguelike. Now I'll give you a second to try and think of how many grid-based, turn-based, non-modal games have come out in the last year or so.
Last year or so. I can't think of one. But, do you know what the best roguelike game is? I guess you could even argue it's roguelite because you don't lose everything like you do in a roguelite, roguelike game. I was gonna say Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, but unless you were like playing hardcore, yeah, it's even then that's not even a roguelike.
Oh, what? You can't think of anything? You're telling me games with fucking ASCII art aren't popping off right now? Huh, that's
Crazy.
weird. I understand the thought process behind roguelite since it's the same thought process I brought up with Souls-like. If you specifically enjoy games that are actually like Rogue and you go and try to search for them, you're going to get bombarded with a bunch of Binding of Isaac clones more than anything. But at this point, we've clearly seen that roguelike is the more popular broad term. So trying to wrench it away from games like Hades to apply it to like 20 games that came out in the 90s is just fighting a losing battle.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
that's just how language works. If you want to come up with some term for your classic roguelikes, just call them something like classic roguelikes or true roguelikes, or, and this is a wild idea, just say these games are like Rogue.
Boomer Rogue. Boomer Rogue. Rogue Boomer. Rogue Boomer. Wait, actually, I like the sound of that one.
So anyway, Super Metroid in 1994 and Castlevania Symphony of the Night in 1997 were pivotal and iconic games. In much the same way Doom and Dark Souls were. So like Doom, the elements they used became genres, and like Souls-like and roguelikes, their genres expanded over time as more games fit into them. And many years later, we have the abomination that is Metroidvania. I mean, the name itself...
Metroidvania. A game where you unlock abilities and you can get further in the game. That is what a Metroidvania is. However, here's the fun thing. Even with these genres which are stupid, you know it when you see it.
Comes from combining Castlevania and Metroid, and yet the original Castlevania isn't a Metroidvania, which is confusing. The genre is defined by non-linear interconnected level design and progression gated by the use of certain unlockable abilities, which isn't a thing in Castlevania 1. That game is very linear. Those elements would only be hinted at in Castlevania 2, and even then the genre-defining parts were all from Symphony of the Night, which was 10 games later. More specifically from the mind of Koji Igarashi, who took inspiration from the early Zelda games. Leave it up to him, and the genre would be called Zeldavania because he wasn't even aware of the connection to Metroid until people pointed it out to him. But obviously the genre can't be called Zeldavania because part of the Metroidvania style is that 2D platformer level design that was perfected by Super Metroid. Games like Hollow Knight and Ori and the Blind Forest clearly take inspiration from
Yes, I will play Ori, don't worry.
Yet, there are so many games described as Metroidvania that aren't 2D platformers. Like, you know, Metroid Prime, which, fun fact, some people might not even describe as a Metroidvania, because on top of the whole 2D platformer thing, a key part of the genre is the RPG elements that Symphony of the Night introduced. You heard me right. Not only is Castlevania not a Metroidvania, to some people, neither are most Metroid games. In order to confuse things even further, I've seen people come up with things like Metroid-like, Metroidvania-like, Castleroid, and even Classicvania.
Castleroid. Yeah, brother, I like me some Castleroid.
To specifically refer to all the pre-Symphony of the Night titles. Which, at that point, what are we even doing here? If you need to come up with a whole genre to encompass less than a dozen games, you have a problem. Just call them Castlevania games that came out before Symphony of the Night. We don't need a catchy name and category for them. Really, the Metroidvania genre is such a weird, backwards case study compared to roguelike or Souls-like. Because unlike those genres, or pretty much anything else, it is entirely derived from two separate games that only share a couple things in common, and are part of different franchises that don't even fit into the genre named after them. You can't measure something as a Metroid.
It is actually a weird thing that Metroidvania is a genre that exists. I'd never really thought about it. Look, the reason why Metroidvania works is it's a catchy name. And this is the thing, right? When you have a genre with a catchy name, it doesn't matter if it's stupid. Like Boomer Shooter, right? Boomer Shooter just, it feels nice to say. Or roguelike or Souls-like, they sound nice to say. This is why the light terms didn't catch on. Roguelike and roguelite, they are way too similar. People don't know what the fuck you're saying. But Metroidvania, everyone knows what you mean.
Vania based on how close it is to Castlevania or Metroid. Because even Castlevania and Metroid aren't 100% Metroidvania. We're basing the genre off a weird hypothetical game that doesn't even exist. And all because Metroidvania—
That's why they should be called Hollow Knight clones, because that's what the fuck half of them are.
Is way more fun to say than Symphony of the Night-like. Though, I guess I should be thankful we're not in the timeline where Castleroid took off.
No, I love that one.
Jesus Christ, I think I would have given up gaming altogether if I had to hear people say that unironically. Okay, but surely there's an example of a like genre that does things right. Right? Well, no. But hey, did you know that the adventure game is actually a like genre? And no, it's not a genre built around the idea of adventure, because that would apply to like every game ever. Actually, the adventure in adventure game specifically refers to 1976's Colossal Cave Adventure, a text-based, exploration-focused—
You know what my favorite really dumb genre is? ARPG. Because ARPG refers to games like Diablo, but it literally stands for action role-playing game, which applies to literally every RPG ever made. I think RPG might be one of the worst genres, because like FPS, right? FPS makes sense, or third-person shooter makes sense. You're describing a core game mechanic. Unless you have a game where you can swap back and forth between third person and first person, which is also fun and happens sometimes. But adventure game is a real stupid one.
So technically, the more apt term to use for the genre would be adventure-like, since it works off a similar premise to Souls-like and roguelike. Stuff like King's Quest, Monkey Island, and Myst are all adventure games. Uncharted and Tomb Raider are not, because the key tenets of the genre involve puzzle solving, exploration, narrative, a hero protagonist, and collection of objects.
I had actually never heard of ARPG until like last year, when all the talk Diablo 4 being bad started. Really? I guess I've always kind of been a fan of ARPGs, so I guess it makes sense.
Wouldn't that make Uncharted an adventure? Fuck. Okay, well, adventure games were originally all of that, but more focused on the text-based or point-and-click type of gameplay. A hallmark of the genre is basically no action or combat whatsoever. Plus, narrative in this context is more meant to be about piecing together the story.
Is that AI upscaled? What the fuck is wrong? Yeah, that's gotta be. That text is real funky looking. That feels like AI smoothing.
through the gameplay.
Or it's a weird
like all
ass
the other
font.
like genres, they just had to expand the definition to the point that it basically became meaningless. Unlike roguelike and Souls-like though, adventure games didn't have a major resurgence or rebranding. They didn't try to call every game that came after diet adventure games or something stupid. Mostly because adventure games are dead, with one of the death knells being in 1998 when popular game developer Sierra was sold to Cuck International.
I'm sorry, what?
Or, well, the original.
You want to talk about another genre that's dead? The fucking RTS. Man, I feel bad for RTS fans.
Original text-based game mostly died out in the West. In Japan, however, adventure games have been and still are incredibly popular because guess what? All visual novels are adventure games. I don't even care about nuance here. They're the same thing. Try to leave a comment about it. I dare you. Everything from Kojima's Snatcher and Police Knots to whatever dating sim you can scrape off the bottom of the new releases tab on Steam, these games are all very dating sim you can scrape.
Casual FPS. There it is. Sexual content. I was gonna say, there's no way we have a visual novel here that's not gonna have sexual content.
Off the bottom of the new releases tab on Steam, these games are all very clearly in the same category. And they make up the majority of games made in Japan. Whereas in the West, the tradition of exploration and puzzle-focused narrative games also transformed into things like the Stanley Parable and The Witness, alongside Heavy Rain and Telltale games. And oh my god, I haven't even brought up walking sims yet. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, I fucking hate If your game is built around slowly walking, okay, with the exception of one game that people keep telling me is fucking good, yes, I will eventually fucking play the what do you call it? The what's the fuck it called? You know the game I'm talking about, with the guy with the baby. Death Stranding, that one.
Okay, basically games like Gone Home, Dear Esther, Stanley Parable, etc. are direct continuations of the adventure game, where the focus is on exploration and puzzles with little to no action or combat.
I'm aware.
Specifically, these newer games didn't even have failure states or game.
Wait, yeah, this is Dear Esther. I remember. Wait, you wanna like feel old? Let me do something. Time to feel old. Wait, it's even the old intro. Oh my god.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Total Biscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Dear Esther?
Do you feel old yet?
I'm doing this because people asked me so much. More so than any game in ages.
This is when walking sims weren't a common thing. This game came out and they were like, what the fuck is this video game? Why does this exist?
Which is interesting because it isn't a game. So I've finished it. This is probably one of the first times I've ever done. In fact, it may very well be the first time I've ever done a WTF is of a game that I've actually finished. So first impressions barely counts when your game is an hour long.
Man. I saw this fucking mountain, and I knew what it was. This game created a genre of garbage.
Game overs, which for some reason made a large portion of the internet so angry they invented the term walking simulator
there it is.
To insult them. Because if you can't shoot a Nazi or a demon or a terrorist, then it must not even really be a video game.
Very
just
true.
Ignore the fact.
Well, no, here's the thing, right? You can have a good game where you're just like walking around. Again, Stanley Parable. But there literally wasn't a game in Dear Esther. Like, there was no game. It wasn't a game. Like Journey. Journey is a beautiful just experience. Dear Esther was not a game. It was like a Unity tech demo. Also, aren't walking simulators dead? Yeah, because they're boring.
The term grew in popularity at the exact same time as Gamergate and was famously used to attack a game about a queer person. That is completely unrelated. Probably. And since 2014, the term...
And now the genre's dead because the games were garbage. We can virtue signal about the reason why people didn't like them at the start, but they were garbage, and they always were, and they still are.
Walking sim has been used much more positively to describe these games, in a sort of ironic reclaiming of the word. Though people have tried to come up with alternatives like narrative game or empathy game, which we all know
empathy game. Yeah, that's not gonna stick.
Won't stick because gamers don't know what that is. Anyways, over 4 decades after the original Colossal Cave adventure, the adventure game genre is a rare case of a category being built on one specific type of game and actually having the freedom to branch off into multiple
Stanley
other
Parable was good.
categories.
Yeah, because the Stanley Parable is a game about the narrator, right? The narrator is the enjoyment there.
Point and clicks, visual novels, walking sims, you name it. They managed to separate themselves and become their own thing, instead of being limited to the framework of the original game. Which is even funnier to think about when you know that Colossal Cave Adventure is cited as the main inspiration for Rogue. That's right, if you want to be pedantic about genre names, every roguelike is technically just an adventure light.
Beautiful.
Fuck you. Now, don't get me wrong, adventure games have their purist fans, just like everything else. I'm sure there are people out there saying if a game isn't text-based, it's dead to them. But I'd like to think that it's at least a good starting point for what can happen when we don't limit ourselves to these arbitrarily strict rules and naming conventions. Remember, all these words are made up. That's
true.
how words work. And we made them up to help us communicate better. The whole reason we invented these definitions and put all these games into boxes is just to make our lives easier when we talk about them. But what should be obvious, however many minutes into this video we are, is that when you care too much about the words and definitions, you just end up making things more confusing.
True.
If someone wants to call a game a roguelike because it has permadeath and randomized levels, who cares that it's not turn-based? You and I both know what they're talking about.
Same goes with music genres. Yeah, music genres are a real good one. Yeah, you want to talk about metal fans? Oh, you want to talk about metal core, metal something, metal blah 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 blah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to say that Dark Souls isn't a JRPG, even though it's made in Japan, yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of weird to split games into country of origin anyways. You know what Japan calls...
I disagree. The reason why it's like that is because Japan originated a style of RPG that was very, very different from what you would see in the West. JRPGs are a completely different beast to the D&D inspired RPGs that were developed in the West. My music taste is very weird. It's either metal or weeb music. What about weeb metal?
RPGs made in America? Yoge Kusige, which means shitty Western game. Let game genres be fluid. Let them adapt and change with the times, or even straight up die if they need to. As long as they make things easier to talk about, they've done their job. If they're no longer doing that job, it's time to change things. Stop missing the forest for the suspiciously rogue-shaped trees. Stop trying to come up with more...
metalcore, new metal, black metal, death metal, rapcore, thrash metal. Yup. I just call it all metal. Oh, you forgot heavy metal, by the way. Kind of like a pretty common one.
Rules and regulations and exceptions to these completely made-up terms. Start making up new ones. Better ones. Preferably before people start unironically using the word Souls-Light, because I swear to God if that happens, I'm gonna fucking lose it. Language sucks, video games are complicated, none of this really matters or is important, so why don't we just relax and try and be a bit more open when it comes to how we talk about this stuff. After all, genres are weird and dumb and stupid, and I would hate if they stayed that way.
How you doing? That was a good video.
Thank you so much for watching. I'm not joking when I say this video mostly just exists for me to rant. I could have dived in a lot deeper and talked about a ton more genres. but I figured people much smarter than me have already had all the serious discussions about this topic. I just wanted to make my little jokes and try and wrap it all up in the end. Leave me a hate comment if you don't think I did a good job. If you like this video though, why don't you comment on a genre that I didn't talk about? One that you don't like, maybe one that you do. My personal favorite is Strand Game, because, like, what even was that? Has anyone figured out what Kojima meant by that? Because
Wait, that was a Kojima term? Fucked if I know, it's Kojima.
Oh, and while I'm at it, this entire conversation is not unique to video games at all. Go ask a metalhead how people
There it is! Fucking pre-watched again!
determine what is or isn't metal, or an anime fan what defines an isekai, and you'll get a rant about it.
Isekai's a pretty easy one. Isekai is going to another world. Does anyone argue about what is and is not an isekai? Like, that's kind of like FPS. It's like a very core, basic thing. It's another world anime. Like, it's literally what it means. Does isekai only involve truck-kun? There is a lot of anime that have started referencing the truck, because the truck was such a common genre trope. But no, it's a pretty straightforward one. I would say it's a lot more straightforward than fucking romance or comedy, because basically fucking everything has comedy in it.
As long as this video. This is something that applies to every facet of human language. I just wanted to talk about video games because that's what I know. Anyways, if you want to get your name in the credits like all these...
You want to talk about something that actually is stupid. The big three. People talk about the big three as if it's this, like, real, well-defined concept. Like, what's the new generation's big three? This is just, like, a weird Western thing.
People, go check out my Patreon, linked in the description. If you want to hang out and chat with more people in the community, go join our public Discord server,
Yeah.
Great T-Shirt Club, also linked down below. Thanks again.
What is the video? It was a year ago. Big three board game, exactly, yes. Well, that was a good video. I'm going to watch that Big Three video later. I'm kind of tempted to watch it as well. Because people are like, okay, well, the modern Big Three is, Demon Slayer, My Hero, and One Piece is still there. One Piece never leaves. But like, oh, who's gonna be in the Big Three after Demon Slayer and, My Hero ends? Like, nothing. Because it was just, like, a term used to describe the fact that, and the funny thing is, a lot of people forget that Bleach was even, like, part of that. Because Bleach died off years ago, so people just forgot about Bleach even being part of the original definition. Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man, Dan Dan Dan, actually based. Yes, I agree. Anyway, that's gonna be it for today. Let's just make our own Big Three. Yes, I agree. That's gonna be it for today. I'm gonna probably go head to the gym. I have an important message. What is your important message? Tell me. Actually, I'll send you...
バムファルトとバットマン・ビン・スパルマンが私のお金を全部盗んだので、QXIER は笑いが止まりません。
I hate you. I hate you.